Our next presentation is Quality Management Documents, presented by Kyle Vagadori of the California Air Resources Board.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kyle Vagadori with CARB, and I'm going to be talking today about the quality management documents we need for air monitoring and the PQAO. I've got three main topics that I'm going to hit in the presentation. The first, I'm going to identify those quality management documents that we need and explain why we need them. Next, I'm going to go into our CARB review process and let you know what you can look forward to there. And finally, I'll go over some really good resources needed to make these documents. So why is it so important to have these documents in place? The PQAO is defined in 40 CFR Part 58 Appendix A as requiring the use of common procedures, oversight, and management. So the process of creating these QA documents is the way that we define those details and establish the common reference point. So there's a great benefit you get from having these documents as well. Once you have them in place, everyone on the staff is aware of the same procedures, and they can be used to train new employees and make that a lot easier. Additionally, having these procedures well known and in place in your organization means there's just going to be less mistakes made that could potentially cause loss of data through the invalidation process. The first of the key documents that we need in the PQAO is a quality management plan, or QMP. This is a very high-level document that describes the PQAO quality system in terms of organization and structure, responsibilities, and the lines of authority. The next one is a quality assurance project plan, or QAP. This states the monitoring objectives of the PQAO and details the quality system implemented to ensure that they are satisfied. Of all the quality management documents we need, the ones you'll probably be spending your most time on are the standard operating procedures, or SOPs. These document the instructions of an air monitoring process, procedure, the analysis of a single type of monitor, a calibration procedure, or data review process. And finally, we have the training plans that document the procedure of training new staff and the responsibilities of the trainers. So we have some options when creating new quality management documents. We can either create a new unique document or create an addendum to one that's already approved and in place. The spirit of the PQAO is to have those common procedures throughout to reduce measurement uncertainty. And SOPs themselves are based on established regulatory and guidance minimum acceptance criteria. There are commonly just small differences between how, like CARB, for instance, and a district run certain types of instruments because they're running off the same instrument manuals. So the very high level documents, the QMPs and QAPs, it's really unlikely that a district would want to write their own. There are only a few sections in those that we would expect to be different from the main PQAO. We liaisons can help you to identify those sections for edits. Please note the CARB gas QAP does have a few exceptions to EPA's data validation table. We can note those for you as well. So let's talk about SOPs quickly. Using a current SOP as a template is recommended for consistency. There are times, however, when you would need to create a new document. That's when you're using an instrument that's uncommon in the PQAO that may not already have an SOP written. As I mentioned, SOPs are generally companion documents to the instrument manuals, so you don't need to recreate those entire manuals, just need to reference them in the documents. Here's a shot of the main page of CARB's quality management document repository containing SOPs, QAPs, QMPs. Our field operator training plan is on the same page under the training resources. This repository literally contains years of experience and effort from the entire PQAO. The existing CARB documents are available under the links here to go ahead and download and review. The documents from other districts within the PQAO are listed there, but due to some ADA requirements of our website, you'll just need to email the liaisons and ask for them, and then we can send them over to you to review. You should really take time to browse this repository when you're needing to make a new document. Once you've chosen a document from the repository that you want to make an addendum to, the document we want you to use to do that is this quality management addendum form here. To use this, fill out each open section of the document here. You want to specifically identify the document that you're using to make an addendum to and the version of it. And that can be from CARB. That can be a district document, another PQAO in California, or another organization that's doing the same kind of regulatory monitoring. So go into as much detail as you can in the proposed deviations. You want to reference the part of the document you may be either adding to or deleting and replacing with a section. And feel free to add extra pages to this, as there's not a whole lot of room for detail. Once we receive a quality management document, we look for a number of items. First, we compare the document to applicable regulations and criteria to make sure everything's covered there. Next, we compare to relevant quality management guidance documents. The most applicable here is EPA's QA Manual Volume 2, especially the Appendix D validation table. I'm going to have a slide on that later with more detail. If you have any kind of a deviation to that criteria, the expectation is it will either meet or be more stringent than that criteria. So next, we look at any previous versions of the document or addendum to compare and see what's changed. We look at any TSA findings your district may have to make sure that any updates or changes that the finding requires are covered by the document. And then finally, we just kind of read through it in general as to see how it will be used, if it's readable as a training document for staff. A good resource to use while creating an SOP or addendum is our quality management section, SOP review checklist. There's a spot in here for every required element of the SOP. Please take a look at this when you're setting up those documents. This is based on EPA SOP guidance. This is a good document to kind of look through prior to submitting an SOP for approval. So we regard the review process as a real opportunity to share ideas with the goal of collaborating and coming up with a really effective working document in the end. We may ask for some edits or changes to the documents, and we're happy to discuss any questions that you have about them. We know how important or how little time some of you may have to do this kind of thing, so we won't be sending over things that aren't like really essential edits that you need to make. So some of the common review findings that we come across are just missing required sections of the document. That's where that SOP checklist can really come in handy. Next, we go right into those required by the regulation or guidance QA QC criteria. We're comparing those to make sure they're met in every case. It's a good idea to create a table of those requirements in a document so it's very clear if possible. We recommend that. And finally, we take a look at the document to make sure it's been written and reviewed within the required review period. And also that we review any applicable TSA findings that may be open or recently closed, just to make sure it reflects the current process that the organization is running. Of all the available resources, one of the most important is EPA's QA Handbook Volume 2, especially the Appendix D validation template. That's what you're viewing here on the screen here. This is a page from the first page of the ozone validation table. Please go through the table of the applicable SOP, for instance, that you're going to submit, just to make sure, again, that you're meeting these criteria or doing something more stringent than them. I find these tables to be really helpful to keep around. I keep a copy of them printed out at my desk. Sometimes I bring them into meetings. There's questions all the time that come up related to these. So you can kind of see the way this is laid out: requirement, frequency, acceptance criteria. The information in the right column is very helpful to do further research on where that requirement may come from or get further explanation. The introduction to this appendix is also a very important read, discussing whether a criteria is considered critical, operational, or systematic, and how to treat data when such a criteria is not met. Here are some additional important resources for you. First is our quality assurance webpage. That'll lead you to the second here, the quality management document repository, with all of those currently approved documents available to review. I have a link here to that SOP checklist I showed earlier. And next on here, I have EPA's guidance for preparing SOPs. Additionally, there's a link here for the QAP writing document as well, and there's a new one that should be up soon on the website for review and validation of data. I would encourage you to discuss any document that you're working on with your liaison. I have the list of the names and contact info for everybody here. We may be aware of an available document or reference that can really help and simplify the process. And if your question doesn't fall into our expertise, we'll direct you to the right person that can help. With that, I just want to thank you so much for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you so much.
We will now be entering into the Q&A discussion portion of the presentation. If you could join me on screen, please.
Hey, everybody.
Good morning. Please type your questions into the Q&A chat that you have for Kyle. I believe there was one answered question already. In regards to the tech bulletins that used to be on the website and how they will be there. It is planned to put them back on the website once EDA compliance has been processed on them.
Sure. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go, Kyle.
Yeah, so we do have the older quality assurance bulletins on the quality assurance website. About halfway down, there's popular resources on the page, and a tab for quality assurance bulletins.
So one question that came in, can the SOPs and QAPs from other California PQAOs be shared through the CARB website?
Sure, thanks for that question. Just kind of taking a peek at what we have currently up there. And I think that's a really good idea. We do have some SOPs listed for South Coast. I think it was our intention. Maybe we had not completed the project of getting them all up, but that's definitely something we can work on. And if there's one that you're not seeing, just ask one of the liaisons and we can look into getting it for you. But we definitely want all that information available to everyone.
Next question, how do you treat monitoring agencies that are either doing special studies or short-term monitoring?
Sure. So the majority of what you're going to find in our repository are SOPs for like criteria monitoring. So other types of SOPs and QAPs are ones that we can help review with, but we currently don't have other types of special studies ones look on the website, but that's the kind of thing that I would recommend checking in with a liaison on to see if they're available of any others or aware of any others that are available.
And I think we have time for one last question before we move into our break. The question is, how often do you run into the problem of reconciling info from different sources that point to different criteria? Is it hard to work with original authors to come to a conclusion that is agreeable to all?
That's a good question. Well, we have our reference points from like the EPA data validation table. We're usually looking for those different criteria. If it's, you know, we're kind of looking to see if it's more or less stringent than the validation criteria. So if it's sort of phrased or listed in a different way where we're kind of comparing apples to oranges on how someone does a calibration or something like that, we'll generally just kind of start the discussion and see where we can go from there and try to find common ground to see how things translate to the validation criteria itself.
All right, thank you, Kyle, for joining us here today. We will be moving into a quick break and we will be back with the next session at 9:55 a.m.